All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Man, I think the last 2, 3 days I went equal. I think 5-5, and now 4-4, and then 4-4 again. I just can't get a winning day in this sport. Anyway, let's go over the games. Marquette. I even said when I was picking that game as my favorite game of the day, I was like, if Villanova can shoot over 50%, then they can win this game. Of course, they shot like 80% in the first half, just completely dominated. They end up finishing the game like 58% from three. Um, Marquette ends up like just didn't force many turnovers. I think they ended up equal on turnovers at the end of the game. Just everything that could have went wrong for Marquette went wrong. Maybe it was the wrong side, but maybe Villanova was just feeling it. I think their two stars were 8 for 8 from three within the first like 12 minutes. And then Marquette was just having to play a much different style of game, being in such a big hole early on, down like 20 points. It is what it is. I think you can't look at 3 point defense numbers, especially on the road. Apparently, it doesn't matter. Uh, anyway, we'll move on from that game. That game sucked. Manhattan, just fucking pathetic game, man. Like I knew they would regress from the first time these two teams played, but man, they put up 19 points in the first half. They shot like shit. They got kept turning the ball over, and naturally in the second half they end up shooting, putting up 41 points once they knew they were fucking around a bit too much. And only they of course they lose the game by five, and we have 3.5. They even had a chance in the last few seconds. They shot a two up and missed it, which would have given us a nice backdoor. But yeah, just a pathetic spot. I still think it was the right side, even though they didn't cover. You just can't put up 19 points and a half and expect to be competitive in a game. Pretty Fort Wayne, back and forth game, but they end up running away with it in the end, which was nice. Marist, this game is one of the craziest games I've ever looked at in my entire life. So they played Canisius, who obviously is a 2-24 team, right? Canisius shot 64% from the three, or 64% in general. They just shot like 64% of their shots fell this game. And I know Maris isn't known to have like a fantastic defense, but holy shit, man. I don't know what to say. Maris put up 89 points. Um, Usually when you put up 89 points against a team that's 2-24, you cover 11.5 pretty easily. This Canisius team, the last game against a worse defense, they put up 66, 60, 51, 71, 63, 47 last time they played Marist, 84, 67, 61, 49, 82. Like, this team doesn't put up these kind of numbers. They did it once. And the last time they played, they only put up 47 points. I don't know, man. This sport's fucking weird. Yeah, they end up winning this game by 8. If even if like even if Canisius shoots like 60% from the field, we cover. Like, it was just such an insane performance from them. Um, Maris dominated the rebounds by like 30. Anyway, I don't know. Just a fucking stupid game. Kent State, they were up by like 7 with like less than 2 minutes left, and the game ends up going to overtime where they get shit on. So, um, Miami, I'll give them that. They are a very clutch team from three when it counts. I think there was four threes they had to hit that game in like the final minute of both overtime and regular time in order to stay competitive in that game, and they hit the big moment threes. So it is what it is. Bowling Green, um, yeah, they end up covering pretty comfortably. Thank God. I think they actually win this game outright, so that was pretty non-sweat. Penn looked dead for most of the game. They kind of locked back in at home, which was nice. And Michigan State, pretty back and forth game in the first half, and then they kind of ran away with it near the end. 4-4, another donation of juice to the good old books. Now, for this Saturday slate, I'm going to try to be conservative as possible. If anyone was watching me on my spreadsheet doing the early games, um, yeah, I kept deleting games. I was trying to only pick five for the early slate because I always go crazy in the early games, and they're typically the games that are a lot weirder, um, a lot of shittier games too. So I end up only going with 5 games. I love 3 of them, 2 of them, but I'll let you know which ones those are. Yeah, these are the 5 games so far that I bet for the day. This is only from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. games. 4:30 to 11:59. I will have up another video either in the morning or in a couple hours if I have the mental capacity to go through the rest of the games tonight. But we'll see. Anyway, let's get into the 5 games that I'm betting for the 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. slate on Saturday. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have Marshall heading on the road to play Appalachian State. Now, on paper, these two teams both not very good offensively, but App State defensively is very, very good. They are obviously they haven't played that hard of a schedule, but they've played a harder schedule than Marshall has. And App State is a borderline top 100 defense. They're incredibly good at defending the three, defend the paint really well. They don't give up very many turnovers. They defend their boards well. They don't foul. They are a very well-rounded defensive team. Marshall, on the other hand, they're okay. The only thing that they don't do is they don't turn the ball over, but other than that, they're pretty mediocre defense. Now, these two teams are kind of neck and neck in the Sun Belt. App State has played one fewer game, but they have one win and 2 fewer losses. And they played a harder schedule, of course. App State, offensively, they're not really a great team. They're borderline top 300, but they're going to be shooting a lot in the paint. And that is actually the spot, even though they don't shoot it well at all, that's kind of where Marshall struggles the most. They're outside the top 200 in defending the paint. App State occasionally shoots threes. Again, Marshall, second worst thing they defend is the three. And they will find some success on the boards. They're not that great on offensive boards, but they do have a bigger team for sure over Marshall. And they're going to bring this game to a complete crawl. Marshall loves to play a fast-paced game, but I do believe App State is the better team and will be able to dictate the pace, which is going to throw Marshall off a ton, especially on the 4th game of a road trip. On the other side, Marshall, they're a team that kind of shoots everything, but they shoot more mid-rangers than most. And that is probably something that they're going to end up wanting to shoot more because they take threes. Obviously, App State is a top 23-point defense. They shoot in the paint, where they shoot 33% of their shots from. App State is the 44th ranked near paint defense. Marshall's not going to really find any success on the offensive glass. They're not going to get to the line where they typically do quite often. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really tough spot for Marshall to find points, especially on this long road trip. If you look a bit more on the, individual trends, App State's been playing much better as of lately, while Marshall's kind of been regressing. Both these teams are kind of away from their comfortable zone. App State plays a little bit worse at home. Marshall State plays quite worse on the road. But historically, App State's been a good home team, so I'm hoping that kind of fixes itself. These two teams, obviously, App State just had a nice home win a couple days ago against Georgia Southern, where they won by 5. Now they get to stay at home. Marshall's on their 4th game away from home. They just got a tight win over Old Dominion, a team they probably should have beat handily in a normal situation. I just think this is a awkward spot for a Marshall team. They're ready to go back home, where they are a much better team. They typically win way more at home than they do on the road. Most of their losses have come on the road. And last time they had a road trip, they played really well, actually. They won 3 of their last 4, but now they're already lost 2 of their last 3. You could argue that they got a bump here from the Old Dominion game. But App State, they won 5 of their last 6, including a really impressive 13-point win over Ohio, which was on the road against Ohio, which is pretty hard to do because Ohio plays really well at home. I just think this is a continue to ride spot here for this App State. The line is only 3.5. We're getting them significantly better defense. Marshall's going to be on the road. Obviously it's college basketball, anything can happen, but I think App State is going to find it's going to lock up this Marshall team here at home. Oh, and also just to add, this is App State's last home game of the year, so I really do think they're going to show up for it, get their fans a good farewell W, big one at that. All right, heading on to game number 2, we have Penn State heading on the road to play Minnesota. Now, I like Penn State here. I am a firm believer that college basketball is very momentum-based, and getting Penn State off a win finally after they just had one of the worst stretches probably in their. I would probably not be surprised if this is one of their worst stretches in history. They have looked terrible. Lost 7 games in a row, but before that they won 1 game and had like another 7 losses. But we're finally getting them off a win near the end of the season. I think it was a really big win where they looked. I pretty much watched that entire game and they looked pretty solid. They definitely looked like they were gelling a lot more than they had previously. I'm not sure what changed. But Minnesota hasn't been playing well at home. Neither is Penn State on the road, but I think this is a kind of a letdown spot for Minnesota after a massive win against UCLA on the road. And this is kind of just a momentum game for Penn State. Yes, this is a travel spot where they're traveling pretty far, about 800 miles. But the last two games that Minnesota has played at home, they lost to Washington and Illinois. Um, and if you look at the historics, and the reason why I kind of like to fade Minnesota when they're home favorites, when they're home favorite, they're 1-8 against the spread. They have been much better at covering as away underdogs. They're 9-15 against the spread. Penn State, as away underdogs, at 3-4. Obviously not great, um, but I think this is just they're just gonna ride this wave here. I genuinely believe it. I think +4 is a little bit too much. Um, yeah. If you look at their, I guess, statistical matchups and kind of how both these teams prefer to play, Minnesota has played a significantly harder schedule, and they got all the momentum. But Penn State, they're a team that likes to get offensive boards. I think they're going to find a lot of success there. In Minnesota, their biggest weakness, and the reason why they have never really been able to step up in the Big Ten, is that they can't defend the three. They've been one of the worst 3-point defenses in college basketball. And despite the fact that Penn State doesn't really take that many threes, I think they're going to realize Minnesota is a big team, and they're going to have to adjust their game plan. They've had a lot of time to plan for this game. Minnesota, they do defend the paint quite well. Same with the mid range. So I think Penn State is going to have to play uh, much more of a 3-point style play. And if they do go in the paint, they're going to probably be trying to look to play for a lot of free throws. On the other side, Minnesota, again, they're very similar. They also like to take a lot of near basket shots and get offensive boards, and they're probably going to find success there too. But they're not nearly as good as a 3-point percent team as Penn State. So I don't know. This is more of a positional spot for me. I don't think this is a phenomenal matchup for Penn State. But Minnesota as a home favorite has just been so bad. And Penn State finally coming off a big win. I think they want to end this year off on a high note, similar to how they started it. So give me Penn State here. Yeah, give me Penn State as +4 dogs. All right, game number 3. The two games that I'm not too in love with is the Penn State game and this game, mostly because they're more positional spots than they are model spots. But this just feels like a good spot for Vanderbilt. This is a team that plays way, way better at home than they do on the road. At home, they, borderline top 30 team. Mississippi does play really good on the road. Don't get me wrong; they're actually a top 20 team when they play on the road. But as of lately, these teams have kind of been heading in the same direction. Vanderbilt's been playing a little bit better. Mississippi's playing a little bit worse. And I just like the spot for Vandy at home after coming off 3 losses in a row, 2 of them being on the road. I think Mississippi's coming off in a really emotional loss, where they just lost to Mississippi State again. This is, on paper, Ole Miss should be a better team than Mississippi State, but they just lost them twice in the same year. I think they're going to be frustrated. And now they're having to go on the road after a sandwich spot where they were on the road, went home, now going back on the road. Vanderbilt is going to be coming back home. Not a significant travel spot for Ole Miss because they have won the last 4 games, but Vanderbilt's won their last few games at home. The only game they lost to was the best team in college basketball, which was Auburn. But before that, they beat Texas at home by 8. They beat Kentucky at home by 5. They beat Tennessee at home by 1. They beat South Carolina at home by 3. They already lost to Mississippi State, but this was at Mississippi State's home court, where they were 12-point, where they lost by 12. So we're getting them back at home after a rough road trip. This is definitely a must-win for them. They have been dropping games kind of like crazy lately. It's just hard for me to believe they're going to get 4 losses in a row. That's really the big thing. They have never lost more than 2 in a row this year. Now they lost 3. Yeah, I think this is a Vanderbilt or nothing spot. Obviously, Ole Miss is the more talented squad. I don't think anyone is denying that, but Vandy at home, I just don't think you can take Ole Miss in this spot. Obviously, you could argue that maybe they're coming off an emotional win. They're gonna be playing extra hard, but I think Vandy is gonna dominate the offensive boards. That's one thing that Ole Miss really struggles on. despite the fact that they're a really good defensive team, this Ole Miss team, they are really bad at defending their own glass, and that is where Vanderbilt lives, especially at home. I think that's going to be the difference maker this game. Ole Miss is going to have to shoot lights out from three. They're a really good three-point shooting team, and Vanderbilt does not defend the three well at all. Of course, Ole Miss is the better team. I don't think anyone is arguing that, but yeah, I think Vandy's going to find themselves to be a lot more motivated for this game than Ole Miss is. And Vandy needs a couple more big wins to have any kind of chance at making the tourney. So yeah, give me Vandy here on the money line. I think they're 1.5 spread. So this is a minus 120 bet, minus 125 depending on your book. All right, game number 4. We have Boston head on the road to play American. Now, in terms of the early slate, this is probably my favorite game, which is hard to say because they are still ranked in the 300s. They seem suck. But American on paper is just the way better team, and we're getting them at home. We're looking at them just shooting wise. They're a team that shoots a shit ton of threes. Boston is one of the worst 3-point defenses in college basketball, and that's with playing one of the easiest schedules in college basketball. They defend three at 361st. They give up a 40% 3-point average against bad teams. So a team like American, I think they're going to be able to get all of the looks that they want this game. They're going to shoot from 45 to 50%. At least early on. They're one of the best home teams in college basketball, especially in the Patriot League. Yeah, I think that's just gonna be enough for them to win. Boston, not a phenomenal team. They also like to shoot a lot of threes, but they shoot the three poorly. They're borderline not even top 300 in 3-point percentage. And American, they defend the three pretty well. They're a top 150 3-point defense, despite playing a harder schedule. This is gonna be a game where these two teams are hucking up threes. And if that's the case, we're getting a short line here with the better home team. Yeah, I'm gonna take American here every single day of the week. Obviously, these teams are shit, and anything could happen. But American, like I said, when they play at home, they're a top 200 team. When they play on the road, they're a top 300 team. They have the 26th greatest home advantage in college basketball, next to Boston, the 12th best in the conference. But when Boston plays on the road, they fall to borderline top 350 in college basketball. Like, they're really bad on the road. Now we're getting them on their first road game after barely squeaking out a win against Loyola MD, a team they should have crushed. And we're getting American off a really they were at home. They won two solid games. Went on the road, got shit on by Army. They're coming back home where they love to play. And Boston's head on the road where they're traveling like 400 miles, where they've lost their last 2 games against some really bad teams. And again, Boston actually won this head-to-head by 6 points when when American was in Boston, which makes sense because these two teams are like complete opposites when they're playing at home versus on the road. American, one of the best home teams. Boston, one of the best home teams. Both teams terrible on the road. So we're getting American in the right spot here in a revenge game. I'm not really sure. Let me actually check how many games they have left in the season. Yeah, this isn't their last home game, but it's their second last home game. Their next game is up against Navy, who is, I think, much, much worse. I think they're going to, it's not by any means a kind of look ahead spot, trying to certifiably lock themselves in. Yeah, give me American here. This is my favorite bet of the day. I think they win this game by honestly double digits. That's probably a bit unrealistic, but I think they cover this number. All right, and the last game on the early slate is Hofstra versus Delaware. I'm gonna rock with Delaware here at home. I do think they are the better team, especially as of lately. These teams have identical records. They're both 12-6 on the year. This Hofstra team has been playing really bad. Like, on paper, they're supposed to just be a really good defensive team. They're an awful offensive team. But the one thing that is true is that Hofstra or Delaware, they like to shoot a lot of threes, and they're going to find a ton of success. They're the 35th in college basketball in 3-point percentage. It's one thing Hofstra does not defend very well. They do like to take a lot of near basket shots, which is, I guess, a bit problematic, because that is where Hofstra defends pretty solidly. They're a top 30 near basket defense. But I don't think it's going to be enough here. I think Delaware is going to get to the line a ton. They're going to shoot a lot of threes, and they're a really good free throw shooting team. They shoot 20th best in college basketball. They shoot 80%. On the other side, Hofstra, again, terrible offensively. Obviously, Delaware is not by any means a really good defensive team. But Hofstra, they don't really statistically do anything very well. I'm not necessarily concerned about their offense. That's kind of what's been letting them down lately. Yeah, you can get stops, but can you win games? And that's just been no. At home, Delaware, they basically play the same wherever they are. They're about ranked top 240-ish. Hofstra is a borderline top 200. So Hofstra is theoretically the better team. But if you look at their last 5 ratings, they've fallen to be like one of the worst teams in college basketball. The worst in the conference, 340th. Delaware, they've been playing much better as of lately. Top 250. They play bad teams better than Hofstra does. Hofstra's coming off 6 losses in a row, and not against necessarily very good teams. These two teams have already played this year, and this is the line. This is where I typically try to read into the line. If Delaware's getting numbers being as a home favorite despite losing to Hofstra by, like, how much did they lose by? 25 in January. I think that's very telling of where these two teams are at right now. Delaware, obviously, they're not playing that much better, but they have been playing much better teams. They just lost 2 games at home in 2 close games to Campbell and Drexel. These are 2 teams that are better than Hofstra. And they lost to Towson on the road, beat William and Mary. Like, they've been playing top 200 teams the last 2 weeks. Now they get to play Hofstra, who technically is, but they're a much shittier top 200 team as of lately. And I don't think they want to, leave this home game with a loss. This is their last home game of the year. They just dropped 2 home games. I think they want to end it off with a bang for their home crowd, if there is any. Hofstra, they just had a sandwich spot. They went on the road, went home. Now they're heading back on the road again, where they're 2-2. Yeah, again, I don't phenomenally love this spot, but I do think Delaware is a better team than they showed in that last game they played. Hofstra just shot uncharacteristically well, and I think Delaware in their last home game is going to show up here to take this win over Hofstra. So those are the 5 games that I do like for tomorrow. Yeah, these are all games that back in the day I probably would have bet, but I'm trying to keep it to 5 because I don't want to get burnt. And I typically sometimes bet 30 games on these Saturday slates. And I'm just not too confident in February, like I usually am in January, to be betting that much because motivation is very different. Stats don't mean nearly as much. But yeah, Tennessee, I think they're the better team. I really do, over Texas A&M. I think they show up for that game. Kind of scared to bet it because I'm seeing all these people on Texas A&M. I don't know. I think Tennessee is just a more talented squad, and coming to this time of the year, I think they're going to show up. NC State, they've been absolutely dog shit this year, and can't remember who they're playing. They're playing Wake Forest, who's been playing really well lately. Models love this game, loves NC State at +4. I can't get there. Wake Forest has been playing a little bit too well lately, and NC State's the opposite. You could argue this is a get-right spot, but it's so late in the year that I think some of these players are checked out on NC State, so not touching it. Wofford, this is just a short line for what I would argue is a slightly more talented team. They played a way, way, way harder schedule than Eastern Tennessee has played, and they have basically the same record. So I think Wofford's just the better team. I'm not particularly sure why I don't want to bet this game. I might actually end up betting it, so we'll put an asterisk on that game. Maybe I'll look for a live bet, but yeah, I think Wofford's just a better team, played a better team, and plays really well at home. So yeah, fuck it. Add Wofford to the official game. That'll be my 6th game for the early slate. Game numbers, whatever, UIC, Illinois, Chicago. This team has just burnt me too many times to bet such a big number. Evansville is a team that I don't like to fade because sometimes they just show up to be the best team I've ever watched in my life. In the Valley, I'm not touching it, but I do think UIC has a chance to win this game by double digits. But Evansville's playing so well. I don't like to fade hot teams. I really don't. Sam Houston, this is quite the opposite. I think they are a hot team. They're playing really, 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 really well. But Middle Tennessee, maybe is it too big of a step up? Can Sam Houston keep playing this well on the road? Maybe. But Middle Tennessee, they're just a consistent squad. If Sam Houston's threes don't fall, this game's going to slowly get away from them. So, not touching this one. Baylor, I just think they're the way, way better team here over a Colorado team. The Colorado home sometimes shows up. They're one of the better home teams in college basketball. And Baylor has let me down more times than not in the Big 12. So, probably not touching it. But Baylor should, in theory, win this game by probably like 6 or 7. But we'll see. Seattle, I played them in a dog spot recently, and they got like lost by like 30 points. So I'm kind of just disgusted in them. I don't really want to bet them. But I do think they're not that much worse of a team than Utah Valley. They played a tough schedule, but I don't like to fade this Utah Valley team. But I also don't like to bet them because this line's a bit too big for me. So I think Seattle can cover this number, but I think it also probably moves to like +8 before it tip off. So if you like it, bet it then. Okay, yeah, those are the 6 games that I'm betting. Just to go over them, it's App State, Penn State, Vanderbilt, Americans, my favorite game of the day, or at least the early slate, Delaware, and Wolford -2. I'll probably have another video up sometime around 1 or 2 p.m. I'll try to remember to put it in the pinned comment. I'm going to try to pick my 5 favorite games in the afternoon slate. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we can get a winning day and not a fucking bullshit. And now that I picked Wolford, it is possible that we go 3-3 again. Maybe I need to just pick an uneven number so we either lose or win. This way I don't have to deal with all that bullshit until we get a push. Yeah, I'm only going to pick uneven spreads with 7 games. So no matter what, we have a winning or losing day every single day. I don't know what I'm saying. It's late. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow.